everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. This is Aaron Davis and Eric Davis. We are the Tactical Twins, and we are honored to have on not only a great instructor and holster maker, the father of the modern appendix holster, Spencer Keepers. And he is also, we are proud to say, a sponsor of this show. And we're just honored to have him on again for the third time.
Oh, my gosh.
We only have a few guests that have made it to the three, but we're going to keep doing that because we have some favorite guests. So good to have you back on, Spencer. How you doing, brother?
Good, guys. I'm proud to be here. Very looking forward to this a lot.
Awesome. Well, Eric has some topics that he wants to go over, but I just have to say, again, have to give you kudos because you have contributed so much to the concept of appendix carry. I say it in, actually, I have a new spot that we're running for your holster company and your training company. And the point is, the holsters that are out there that are legit AIWB holsters, they're probably influenced by your designs that you went through, trial and error for many years to make it work and make it comfortable and all that stuff. And I also say this too, is that I took your AIWB skills class, and before the shooting started, that was a great class. And it was all about holster choice, wearing that holster, clothes for that holster. I've got a whole setup based on what I learned in that class. So again, just gratitude to you for what you've contributed with all your knowledge about carrying appendix, because it is a big deal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's very interesting to see, some of the competitors' holsters, and you look at that one and you look at mine and you're like, oh, wonder where that came from. So
yep.
Well, yeah.
You deserve to have that thought.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I've been to some other guys' appendix classes, right? And it's way different than mine, which is good, but where mine settles a lot around gear choices and how to make it work. How does this whole appendix carry equation, as I call it, how does all the little factors of that make appendix carry work for a person, right? The other appendix carry classes I've been to has been about, how to really draw from appendix and stuff like that, which I cover, in depth in my class as well.
Oh yeah.
So it's been interesting. But it was very interesting too, that the dude teaching it, he's a great instructor, Scott Jelinski. But he came through 3 of my classes and then called me one evening. He's like, hey man, I've got a bunch of guys that are asking for me to teach an appendix class. And I'm like, well, go do it. He's like, well, I just wanted your permission before I did. And
that's cool.
That meant a lot to me, so.
Yeah, that is cool.
So, but yeah, if you ever get a chance to train with Scott, you need to.
We incidentally, in October, I'm taking his Red Dot instructor class right here outside of Fort Bragg. So I'm really pumped.
I'm so jealous. I've been trying to get into that for like 2 years now, and it just like the days just don't ever line up.
Oh yeah, I'm jealous too, because we had Scott on when Eric figured out that date was open, and it's like, man, Scott had just taught the class in Oklahoma, I believe it was. I could be wrong, but there was something that it was like too close, too late or something. But I don't want to go on without saying this. So I play gigs quite a bit, and you can see all the guitars around me. And I'll tell you what, that's one of the areas where Appendix is not that great because it makes my guitars kind of poke out,
Yep.
And I can't see it. Probably can't see it on this camera, but there's gun marks all over the back of this guitar. But
That's funny.
I don't care about that, but I've just started getting, it's just like not comfortable because I like torque my back to try and get around the gun.
Right.
So I finally this weekend actually I took my wedge off my holster and stuck it in the hip. Dude, hip carry sucks.
It does.
Once I have done that recently, just like, well, not too recently, but just trying out some sample holsters and some proof of concept stuff that we're working on, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I was just like, oh my, how did I carry there for so long,
Yeah.
Because, and it is a little funny for me. Everybody talks about my contribution to Appendix, right? Well, I started carrying Appendix in like 2009 or 10 or something like that. I've carried a gun since 1987.
Yeah.
And most of that time was strong side carry.
Mm-hmm.
So I have way more years carrying a gun on my side than I do Appendix. But, and I appreciate that, the title or the concept of the stuff that I've given to the industry for sure for Appendix carry. But I always just think it's a little ironic.
Yeah. Well, and I want to be very clear. Hip carry is perfect and what some people need. What I mean is I don't know how long I've carried Appendix. It's probably, I'm just started right before I took your class. That was maybe 4 years ago or 4
or 5 years ago, something like that.
So I haven't been doing it a long time, but it's just that when if you take what I learned from you and you know that you can make Appendix more comfortable, more concealable than someone just grabbing one of the catch-all holsters off their Facebook feed and then going, man, I can't stand that Appendix holster.
Right. Yeah.
If you know how to do it, it's more comfortable than inside the waistband hip.
Yeah.
I can attest to that because I've been going back and forth.
Well, Dunning-Kruger is alive.
To bring that up.
Dunning-Kruger is alive and well in holsters.
Oh,
for sure.
I just yesterday, or the day before yesterday, get out, Cooper. I saw some Facebook feed where this dude is, pretty chunky guy, right? And he's like, his thing is like Pew Pew Tactical or something. It wasn't that, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, fat guys can't Appendix carry. And I'm like, oh, not again. Now, it may take a lot to make Appendix carry work, which is why I talk about the equation. But, there, and again, there are some people that strong side carry is the only way or the best way for them to carry. Appendix it will not work on their body, and that's fine.
Yep.
So anyhow, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but
I wanted
to touch on that a little.
Oh, it really was just me, since I'm used to Appendix and I prefer it. It was just amazing going back and forth. That's all I wanted to say. If you're an Appendix person, most likely if you try that hip again for a while, you may not like it. But,
yeah, that's true.
Eric, bro, you've got some good topics that you wanted to bring up for this round table of gun geeks.
Well, and a lot of this started by Spencer texting us about, just a little bit of a discussion on the Eli Dickens shooting at the Greenwood Mall in Indiana. And, it's one of those things where we always need to try to learn. Lessons learned from incidents like this are crucial. And Spencer made some very, very good points via text that, man, we just thought we needed to discuss this. And so we're having Spencer on for that. So we're going to talk about lessons learned or we have some assumptions right now, obviously. But one of the things that I really wanted to make the point, did you guys happen to see, because I'm guilty of this. Maybe it's not being guilty. I feel like I should know what the leftist media is saying. And after Eli, a hero, stopped the murder of multiple individuals, that at least CNN had it on the top of their page. And I'm like, this isn't. No, it wasn't at the top. I think it may have been several stories down. Anyway, it was at least on the front of their website. I was like, hey, I'm gonna click on this story and read it and see what they have to say. And it was very innocuous at the beginning, but then it only mentioned Eli, stopping the shooting in very, very quick terms, and then immediately went into, yeah, but the statistics show that civilians don't really stop these shootings very much at all. And did you guys happen to see stories like that? I saw them everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found extremely interesting is I found some quotes from a couple of very venomous anti-gunners, one of them being the founder of Moms Demand Action, Shannon Watts. And she said, I don't know who needs to hear this, but, nice little, that this sounds like a high schooler to me. I don't know who needs to hear this, but when a 22-year-old illegally brings a loaded gun into a mall and kills a mass shooter armed with an AR-15 after he already killed 3 people and wounded others, is not a ringing endorsement of our implementation of the Second Amendment. So that's one, and we'll hit on both of these. And then we have Chris Brown of the BradyUnited.org, which is Brady campaign, right? Here's what we're not going to do. Continue to uplift the NRA myth of a good guy with a gun. Let me be clear. If more guns made us safer, America would be the safest country in the world. We need sensible gun laws, not vigilante safety nets. So, I mean, I don't know your guys' thoughts on that. I mean, it's just snide. It's an attempt to devalue the fact that this young man saved countless people's lives. And it proves one thing. It proves that they do not care about saving people's lives, right? They're always saying, 100%. Hey, if we could just save one life with this gun control law, then it's worth it. Well, in this specific incident, Eli Dickens saved possibly, and you mentioned Ed Monk's work pre-show, Spencer. I think the average is that a active murderer can kill one person every minute. That's just an average. Obviously, in this case, it happened a lot faster. But if we even just did a rough estimate with how much he had on him, he could have, major carnage in that food court.
Yeah.
So your guys' thoughts on that, Spencer? I'll let you comment on that. I mean, just the attempt to devalue it. Go ahead.
The fact that, and I read the same quote, and it is so troubling to me that she would say that 22-year-old illegally brought a gun into a mall and not even think or talk about the 20-year-old who illegally brought 3 guns into the mall.
Exactly.
2 of them are, modern sporting rifles. I heard that he had like I don't know how many mags, but he had like 200 rounds of loose ammo on him, in addition to the extra mags. And he had staged one other rifle in the bathroom so that if he got pushed back by tactical pressure, say this, SWAT team finally showed up or whatever, he could retreat to that and get another weapon if that weapon that he used, malfunctioned or quit or got shot or, whatever. So for her to say that the hero illegally brought one in and then not talk about the bad guy not obeying any gun law, it just makes me furious, and I'm trying not to get worked up about it, guys.
Well, Spencer,
it's mind-boggling. I even hate to say the trite twisting of logic, but they literally are finagling themselves into a pocket to where they can say something that dumb and ignore the externalities that are in this physical universe.
Right.
True reality.
Right.
They are literally, reality all around them, and they ignore it because they care more about their anti-gun agenda than saving lives. Now, I wanted to. I'm glad you brought up her saying that he illegally brought that firearm, and as we know, the majority of the no Beretta signs and the no 1911 signs. You know what I'm talking about? The no gun signs. Every now and then you'll see a no. No revolver, and I'm always just fine with that because I don't have a revolver on me. But joking aside, we know that those are not laws; those are policies. Those are policies of the institution.
Yes, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
yeah, you're fine.
The sheriff or police captain or spokesperson, struggling to find the exact word to call him. He said several times that Eli was lawful in his carry of the firearm into the mall, right? And then you have that same thing. Here's the police that say, "Hey, this guy was lawful in what he did," and you have the anti-gunners, as we've called them, saying, "Oh no, he broke the law doing that," and they'll, to whatever body of audience that they have, those people will believe that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and guys, I have to interject on this, and this is just my understanding, is that in Indiana, and let's just applaud the very fact that Indiana had just passed constitutional carry, and Eli was the beneficiary, and every person's life saved that day was the beneficiary of constitutional carry, because he didn't have a carry permit. He was carrying legally because of that July 1st constitutional carry. Now, I'll add this. Is my understanding that Indiana, yes, that mall did have a no gun policy on that premises, is my understanding. But also, what I also understand is that Indiana law, that it only means that if you are discovered to have a firearm, and if you're carrying concealed properly, it's not going to be discovered. They can ask you to leave. If you don't leave, or if you return, you'll be trespassed. That's my understanding, and anybody in the audience that can correct me, I'm glad to have that conversation. But that's my understanding.
Yes, so that's my understanding. That's my understanding as well, and that's the same essential law we have here in Oklahoma. The mall, all the malls have no gun signs on it, etc. and a lot of businesses, furniture businesses, for some reason, are big on that. But you're right in that doesn't hold any legal ground until they have asked you to leave. And if you refuse to leave, then you are trespassing, right? Now, there are some places, obviously, that you don't want to carry a gun that may have gun signs, such as a federal post office or a federal court building, or, et cetera. But banks, like I carry my gun into a bank, credit union, whenever I need to. They don't even have any stickers on the door. I mean, it's just part of the deal. So, some states, churches are that way. You can, and in some states you can't. And there is some legal, issue there above what trespassing would be. But that's just something you need to know for your state or wherever you're traveling to.
Excellent point. Well, what I wanted to bring up is I was listening to Gun Talk, the radio show with Tom Gresham, which he's a pretty neat older guy. And I'll tell you, before there were good gun podcasts, he was around. So, and he's pretty up with the times too, which is really cool. But I digress and say that he had Eli Dickens attorney on, and of course he was not talking about specifics of the case, but what he did say, and you guys got to forgive me, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and I can't remember the government official. I believe she was in Congress that tweeted the same thing. She repeated the thing, that he brought in an illegal gun to stop this. Now, two things. Again, why the heck are they so concerned about him bringing the illegal gun in if it was? But since it was not illegal, his lawyer said, yeah, there's going to be some consequences for that tweet. I responded to her tweet and said, ma'am, please look up the term in your state, which is defamation in fact, I believe is what he said. And he said there will be consequences. So it sounds like there's going to be some civil lawsuits going on for defamation.
I so hope that really, and that seems to have been gaining a little bit of traction. We've seen, the dude, the kid that had the Magna hat on, that he ended up with, I was like $270 million or something for that. Which power to him. And and then just recently with Kyle Rittenhouse, thank you.
Yep.
Getting old sucks.
all of us.
Right. I read a deal here a while back that The View settled with him out of court, just like whatever you want, we'll settle with you.
Oh, nice. I did not hear that.
Yeah, it wasn't for, I thought it should have been much more, but I think it was for like $22 million or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. So, those folks that talk so evil about law-abiding citizens, the gel of our country, essentially, I think they need to be held accountable for that.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, and here's, I wouldn't expect necessarily the people on The View to be this smart, but they need to remember they can say whatever they want about public figures. They can say flat out lies, and there's not public figures, famous figures. It's very hard to have defamation lawsuits successful on their behalf. The three of us, as famous as we all are, some people can say whatever they want about us. We can't do a damn thing about it. But someone like Eli and Kyle Rittenhouse, that thank God that they had especially Kyle Rittenhouse had his life they attempted to ruin his life for protecting his own life against people trying to kill him. And he deserves every dime he could get out of those people that make millions of dollars talking trash about everybody.
Unless it's in the gun community or a very, a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Gun-centric company or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way he would ever get a job at probably Boeing or even the government or Yahoo or a tech company or something like that. I mean, Subway or
in other words,
or whatever. He's unemployable.
They ruined his earning power from almost everything. Like you said,
you just said it, Spencer. He's unemployable.
Yeah,
absolutely, and all for a political statement and an anti-gun agenda. And to me, I believe, I'm optimistic. I believe that all of what we've been seeing, and including the Bruin case that was so brilliantly passed down by Justice Thomas, is that there's light there's light at the end of the tunnel, possibly. But Aaron and I spoke about this maybe an episode ago, is that the left's relentless, and it's never going to end. And we got major battles, and but I am optimistic. We've had a lot of victories recently, and the Kyle Rittenhouse case was also a victory. Well, guys, I think it's a good segue into talk about the other narrative, and that is that these mass shootings have been on the rise. And I found a piece by John Lott, and I'm just going to very quickly breeze over the highlights of this. And the piece is Corrections to the FBI's Reports on Active Shooting Incidents. And again, that's by John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Now, when he did this paper originally, he was the senior advisor for research and statistics at the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Legal Policy. So when he wrote this, he was in a public capacity, which I found interesting. For some reason, I didn't know John Lott had worked in that capacity. I've read a couple of his books and whatnot, but bottom line is that this narrative that active shootings, or as we like to call them, active murder incidents, are on the rise, is completely false. For some reason, and I'm not going to, I can't claim nefarious roles at the FBI. I think I'm going to stop right there for a split second and say that I know that at the ground level that there are phenomenal, brilliant, awesome FBI agents at the ground level. But for some reason at the leadership level, there's something that has been wrong with the FBI for many years, as we know.
Well, that's not just related to the FBI exclusively either.
Yep.
And right. I just wanted to make that point. So,
yep.
Very true.
Very, very good point. So bottom line is, let me breeze over some of this real quick, is that errors in the initial FBI report on active shooting. In September 2014, the FBI released a report stating that public shootings had risen sharply since 2000. That's key. 2000 is interesting. The report found that 160 mass or active shootings occurred in public places from 2000 to 2013 and increased from just one in 2000 to 17 in 2013. Newspaper headlines relied on the report's data. FBI confirms a sharp rise in mass shootings since 2000. New York Times. Mass shootings on the rise, FBI says. Wall Street Journal. FBI mass shootings incidents occur more frequently, CNN. And the list goes on a little bit there. So I guess the bottom line is that we know that news outlets for many years have used that narrative, and this is data from the FBI, right? So interestingly enough, the authors relied heavily on Google News searches that compiled cases. So we know how reliable Google is, right?
Right.
The FBI missed 20 multiple victim shootings involving at least 2 people killed. The missing cases were 3 times more likely to have occurred from 2000 to 2006 than in 2007 to 13, thus exaggerating the increase that was widely reported. Now, looking at their chart, and folks on film can probably see this. You see this sharp arrow up, right, in this trend line. So they chose 2000 for a reason, because 2000 only had 1 mass shooting. And there were an uptick taking out all of those cases, right? Now, when John Lott added in all of those missed cases, and this is essentially the finding, there has only been, and this he went all the way back 38 years, there has only been a slight, statistically insignificant upward trend over 38 years from 1977 to 2014. Even then, the trend depends on a single year, 2012, because 2012, there were 91 deaths. So it kind of skewed some of the findings. And bear with me, guys. I'll jump through this real fast. The real crutch of this data is that it seemed to be that they were trying to pull out cases that involved concealed carry holders. And again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that's the exact reason.
Okay.
But it sure as hell seemed like that was part of their agenda. Now, when John Lott and his organization pointed this out, the FBI admitted, and this is back on the paper, the FBI admitted that it sometimes makes subjective decisions. The selection of cases for inclusion in these reports is a result of consensus vote of analysis and analyst and law enforcement professionals using the methodology stated in the original 2013 study. In some cases, a level of interpretation is required with which all may not agree. And I might have breezed over one section. Essentially what they said is, oh, we knew our data was skewed, but we felt that it was way more important for law enforcement and policymakers to have this data than be in the dark. So essentially, though, in conclusion, that's why I want to make sure we get to our other subjects before we get too long in the tooth here, is adding in all these cases where concealed carry was actually used. The claim in the original FBI report that active shooting cases have increased over time was a result of data errors. Now, skipping to the portion here about concealed carry. For the period from 2014 to 2019, the FBI had missed additional cases. Once those cases are included, there were 25 cases out of 162, that's 15.4%, where people with permitted concealed handguns stopped the attack. The FBI report keeps excluding cases where shooting attacks have been stopped by concealed handgun permit holders. To put it differently, this is what's I think is crucial. While 36% of active shooting attacks have occurred in places where guns were allowed, Okay, so anytime it occurred when guns were allowed, almost half, 42.3% of those were stopped by people legally carrying a gun. So you don't hear that statistic at all. So
repeat that again.
Yep.
Real quick.
I will repeat it again, certainly. So 36% of active shooting attacks have occurred in places where guns are allowed. And in those, 42.3% of the time, they were stopped by a person with a gun, a good guy with a gun, to go against the twits I quoted earlier. So isn't that interesting?
Well, Eric, I can, since it's germane to what you're talking about here, I also went to the Crime Prevention Center of John Lott and found another article that was about, I mean, it's a huge compilation of concealed carry holders stopping mass murder. And I mean, I just did this cursory. There are already 5 of these incidents stopped by a civilian in 2022, and there were 9 of them stopped in 2021. And the funny, what I'm going to assume, I don't have any. Again, this is just conjecture on my part, but I think it's from an educated standpoint that when these individuals say that civilians don't stop these events very often, they're probably just Googling it, or they're going by a false study like this, right? The problem is that John Lott had to and he's just compiling news articles, right? He's not doing anything where someone can try and accuse him of tweaking data in a scientific study that has flaws in it or something.
And Aaron, for full disclosure, he's also using additional FBI stats.
Oh yeah. Sorry, and I don't want to conflate those two things. What I'm talking about is, again, the people that say this, that good guys, quote, good guys with guns don't stop these mass killings very often. But I'm just saying, the reason why those people don't know about it is they're only local stories.
Yep.
That is key. They are only local stories. You got to search for them. You got to find, because the national media has no interest. And I'm not saying this from a nefarious, us being liberty and conservative, and then we've got lots of left-leaning journalists, but not even talking about that. But they're just not. It's not something that's going to get them ratings, right?
No.
Hey, so a guy stopped. A guy killed an evil dude with an AR-15. He was about to shoot a bunch of people, but he's the only one dead. Wow, they're not gonna cover that, right?
Well, and I'd like to close this portion out because we want to get into the meat of what Spencer's expertise is going to provide to the discussion. And I think the bottom line about that last statistic that I read is something that we always talk about, is that these incidents typically happen in gun-free zones by choice, by the perpetrator, the murderer, because they know they're not going to be opposed. And in the instances where people were allowed, it was a huge uptick. This 42.3% is pretty amazing data. And I didn't know that personally until I read that. So
that's excellent news.
Well, Spencer, we really want to get into some of these lessons learned from Eli Dickens, and you had some brilliant points, man. Let's jump into this.
Okay, before we do that, I want to add, because this is a great place to add it, and then we'll expand on it real quick.
Yes, sir.
So I have been to the Tactical Defensive Institute in Ohio's 3-day active killer shooter class back in 2013. Actually was a guest of Greg Ilfritz, and you guys need to have him on here if you haven't.
If he'll come on, we've asked him.
he is so busy. He keeps himself so busy. It's not funny.
Yeah.
But
well, but if you get a hold of him, tell him to come on. That's
I'll send him a text. I've been to Ed Monk's active shooter class, and I've taken a few active shooter killer classes like at TACCon and some different things with Chuck Haggard and some other guys. One of the things that we've learned is if you put virtually 100% of the time, if you put tactical pressure on an active shooter, they will either be shot or they will stop or they will take their own life. Just almost 100% of the time. And everybody say hi to Cooper.
Hey, Cooper.
Hey, Cooper.
We love our pets.
Yeah, he was down here whining so loud I thought everybody could hear him, so I just gave in and let him up in my lap.
We could hear him some, but it added a nice ambience.
Oh yeah, bring him on. He looks like a good watchdog there.
Man, he's a pretty special pup. We rescued him. Long story, rescued him, and the first day we brought him home, it was kind of funny. He crawled up in my lap, and he's just been there ever since. And he's awesome. He's just the best little dog. So anyhow, so
they are our family members, absolutely.
Yeah. So moving into kind of the meat of what we kind of talked about with this Indiana mall shooting has really broken all the rules of what we typically see or think with a self-defense interaction. I mean, for the last, I don't know, 120 years, it's been 3 shots at 3 yards in 3 seconds, right? Well, and I'm not saying that that's not possible, and I'm not saying that that's not realistic at all, right?
Yeah.
But this shooting really expanded on some things. One, from all the reports that I've read, he engaged the shooter at 43 yards. So roughly, I've heard 40 and 50, and then I've heard that exact 43-yard number. So we'll run with about that. So, it seems like now all of a sudden, if you get on, Facebook or Instagram or, whatever, and if you're involved in the self-defense community, there's the Dickerson Drill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an IDPA or USPSA target at 40 yards, and you draw and you have 15 seconds to shoot 10 rounds, because that is what he did based on the timestamps of the video that we have. Obviously, we haven't seen the video, and I hope it does come out sometime.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure it will. I mean, it just almost has to. So with that, the couple of points that I want to talk about right there is, so they're in the food court. Him and his girlfriend, I'm assuming, are probably sitting at a table, maybe eating food or talking or, whatever. They're having a nice, date out. And the beep for him was gunfire, right? So in that 15 seconds, he had to run his OODA loop up. He had to orient himself to that. He had to observe what was going on. He had to make a decision. He had to act on that decision, right? That takes time. So the way I understand it from everything I've read, he essentially stood up, grabbed his girlfriend, took her to the ground, pushed her to the ground so that she would, be low and maybe there was some cover there. Drew his firearm, and I don't know what it was. I've heard anything from a Hellcat to a Glock 19 to a Glock 17. And that's kind of irrelevant, right?
It is.
We talked about this pre-show, gear does matter, but it doesn't matter to the point that a lot of people think it does, right? And he made, I think the way I've read is he moved a little bit to like a position of cover, or at least concealment, and he made a first round hit on this guy. And that, I think, is something that really, really changed the outcome of this.
Oh, yeah.
Because making that first round hit changes everything. If you watch John Correa's active
self-protection,
man, there's getting so many active, pistol shooter or something or another. It's hard to keep them all straight. But
oh, yeah.
He's thousands of videos now, and he was at one of the instructor conferences that I was at, one of the range master ones, and he was talking about how, like, the first person to get a hit wins the gunfight like 99% of the time, right? So that first round hit was huge. I can't wait to see the coroner report of it to see where the bullets actually hit, right?
Yeah.
And then he continued to engage the guy with 10 rounds. He made 8 hits. Now, that could be a little misleading. And I say that because I've read a bunch of stuff on this from some really knowledgeable cops talking about it. And the coroner is going to call any bullet wound a hit. So say this dude had the AR up and he shot him and it went through his wrist, right? And then into the chest. Well, that's 1, 2, 3, right? So
interesting.
So we don't really know that those 8 hits were singular 8 hits. But honestly, I hate to say this, it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is he didn't hit any innocents.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
And it took the shooter down. And when he recognized that the shooter was down, he quit shooting, which is phenomenal. The accuracy that this guy had was divine.
Yeah.
I'll use that word right there.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't do this drill in my appendix carry class because I have so much data to try and put in that 8 hours, right? But in all my other classes, at the end of the day, we do a walk back drill. And we take a roughly A-zone piece of steel, and we start at 10 yards, roughly 10 yards, support hand only. And the way the drill goes is you shoot, and if you make a hit, you holster your gun up, and I demo each one, right? So I'll do it, and then I'll step back 3 to 5 yards, right? Normally 3 to 4 yards. And each person will shoot. You shoot until you miss with your support hand. The next time you come up, you add your strong hand to the gun. And I do that because nobody ever shoots that way. But even if your strong hand was injured, but you could still get a little support on the gun, it makes it more stable, thus making it more accurate. So I do that so people can understand that, because, you may very well get shot. If you've ever been in a good force on force class, you see a lot of wounds to the hands and to the arms, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at some scars I have from Sims rounds right there.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, yeah, I understand 100%. So from there, you shoot till you miss. Then you're strong hand only. You shoot till you miss. and then you're a freestyle or two-handed. So each time you're shooting at that piece of steel, you're 3 to 5 yards farther away from it. And we routinely in a class will get, most of the guys will commonly get back to 30, 35 yards, something like that. Occasionally we'll have a shooter that's maybe not quite as developed as they think they are. They'll only get to 25 or something. But in just about every class, we've made it back to, at least with ranges where we can accommodate this, obviously, right? We've made it back to about 80 yards. A class in Ohio I did a couple of years ago, I maxed the range out at 113 yards, shooting a Beretta with iron sights, and every single was a double action round.
Double action, huh?
Yeah. So, so what that does for you is it gives you a real sense of, hey, I can make hits back to this range. And, if you're getting back to 60 or 70 or 80 yards shooting on again, this is an A-zone piece of steel. It's not a full silhouette. It's not a BC piece. It's an A-zone piece of steel. And actually it's a little smaller than an A-zone.
So when you're talking about an A-zone,
like
USPSA or IPSC?
USPSA target, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, that gives you a whole lot of confidence on what you can do with handgun. And it lets you know where your skill set is. Some guys don't need to work on that at all. If you can hit that A-zone piece of steel at 80 yards, bro, I think you're solid right there. Maybe you need to work on it a little, but you don't need to work on it a whole lot. If you're only hitting it like 25, 30 yards, I would put some work in on that, right?
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what the problem is going to be.
Well, and Spencer, if I could interject, this is actually, I think, enlightening to a lot of us that are in, we're Aaron and I, and we're amateurs in this business right now, but we're doing our best. But I would tell you that even amongst our biggest mentors, I think that everybody is looking at this and saying, yes, we've been talking about accuracy for a long time at distance, but I think it's also making us understand that, yeah, you just said it. You don't know what the problem's going to be. What if your fight is such an outlier that it has no real impact on statistics? Is, I think, what the problem is with looking at things. And what does Tom say? It's not the odds, it's the stakes.
That's correct.
Right. And so what if you're shooting it and you're protecting your family? What if it is a 40, 50, 60 yard shot? You got to work at that distance. And it's most certainly proven to me that it's like, you know what, I am going to work a lot more at distance. And Aaron and I, audience members have heard us talk recently. We just got back from the Range Master Advanced instructor class. And again, one of our epiphanies from that, it's like we feel fairly comfortable at distance, but it proved to us we need a lot more work, and we've been putting in that work too. So not everything is close distance. And this is a good discussion because all of us need to do better at distance and take it seriously.
Right.
Well, I guess it'd be a good time for me to kind of tell a little bit of a side of this too. So I have not worked at distance for 20 years because my eyes, I literally just had cataract surgery about, I don't know, almost a year ago now. But I couldn't see a B8 to work at 25 yards. Couldn't even see it until now. And now that I can, I'm working on it. Hey, I can hit that, that, what is it? The 8 ring, the just all in the black. I got all in the black in a 10 round drill for the first time ever a few weeks ago. And
awesome.
But at the same time, doing this Gibbons class, it's also made me, and we can talk about gear in a bit. It made me hate my freaking Glock trigger. but you know, it's part trigger and part technique. A lot of it's my technique, of course, but I wanted to say, so I didn't even, it's funny, I guess I had my head in the sand, and I knew people were talking a little bit about this 40-yard shot and maybe doing drills on it, but I wasn't that keyed in on it. I didn't know it was, you know, all over Facebook, and some guys giving, you know, even some guys that I really respect giving guys a hard time, like, hey, we've been telling you all need to shoot long distances forever. You ain't listen to it. But wait a minute. So that's true. You guys have been. But still, a lot of guys either couldn't shoot, haven't tried it, haven't been pushed to do it, haven't been exposed to the fact that they need to. So not everybody has this in their wheelhouse.
Right.
So I went out there and I have a new carry gun. I commandeered my wife's 48 because she hadn't been carrying it much, and I asked her if I could use it until I save up some cash for a custom gun that I want. That'll be another story. But long story short, I took that out there, put an OK0 on it. I thought, okay, I'm going to go here, and I just made up my own kind of drill for this. I went to 40 yards. I said, okay, I'm going to shoot this fairly fast because I'm going to try and put some pressure on myself. I'm shooting this offhanded. I got all 10 rounds on the bottle of the Rangemaster target, except for one, and I called it my lawyer shot. But I was glad to hit. I was glad to hit that because I don't think I've ever shot a pistol at 40 yards. Maybe I have once or twice. I think I actually did once in an IDPA match, and I just remember it being excruciating because of my vision. But and that was on a. Now I realize that gun had a real tough trigger and everything. But I'm glad I did it that way. I could have shot it better with a little bit tweaked up gun, but you know, it was as honest of a drill that I could put together. I was cold. I had actually just put the 0 on there. That's all the shooting I had done. But it's not accuracy that I was proud of. It you know, I sure wish I was all in the 8-inch circle, but you know, hey, I guess that's one question to talk about. We aren't getting bullseye shots out here at 40, 50 yards. You know, we're talking about getting, quote, combat effective hits. Would you comment on that, Spencer?
100% on that. You know, I'm not going to say that I can do a headbox shot at 40 yards, at least not reliably. You know, maybe if I put in some real time, I could do that. But, you know, we talked about this just a little bit earlier. The first bullet that you can get into into the bad guy, the better. And while they may not be perfect hits, they're probably going to distract him a little bit, right? And let's say, we go back to what we talked about, as soon as they get tactical pressure on them, well, let's say that's enough tactical pressure, it's better than nothing, right?
Yes.
A marginal hit in this kind of context. And remember, we've got to keep this in context. Is better than a miss, right?
Yeah.
Obviously we want the most perfect centered shot on the nose or chest that we could deliver, but I'll gladly take one in a shoulder or a kneecap or whatever, and give me more advantage to continue to put tactical pressure on them. So,
well, it's kind of like that saying. I've heard multiple people say it, and I've said some iteration of it over the years, is any shots on them are bad for them, good for me.
Yeah. Well, and let me just segue just a little bit on this. You know, I'm a lifelong hunter, right? I've killed more freaking deer and antelope and hogs than 10 semi trucks could haul. Well, there's been few occasions where, hunting in a party or something like that, where somebody had made a bad hit on an animal and we were tracking it and it got up and started, running or limping or whatever. But we could see that the animal was injured. Well, at that point in time, I'll take any hit that I can put on the animal, right? Because the sooner that I can end that animal's suffering, the better I'm going to feel about it, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take a marginal hit at that point in time. If all I have is a straight going away shot, and this actually happened a year ago with my stepdaughter, first deer she's ever shot in her life. She made a great shot. Somehow or another, she shot this doe straight into the chest cavity and missed both the heart and lung. I don't know how she did it. But as it was running away, of course, now it's been shot. I'm assuming it's been shot way better than it was. I had a fleeting second to make, a Texas heart shot, if you will. And I was able to get a bullet in there and put that deer out of its misery. So I think in a tactical situation like this, where you've got a handgun versus an AR at distance, I'm going to take any hit I can get.
Oh yeah.
So
very good point. I mean, that is the point, Spencer. I mean, this young man was fighting against a dude that had a freaking rifle.
Yeah.
Not
a fair fight at all.
Not at all. So, I mean, it just makes it that much more impressive. And
yes.
and the stones of this young man, and also I think there was some divinity going on in this situation for sure.
I can't deny that. Yeah. I mean, I've shot with I've shot with Rob Latham several times. He's the best handgun shooter in the world. And I guarantee you, he was impressed by what this kid did.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. Yeah. So I think we've talked a good bit about that. I want to kind of move into the what we've learned about the first victim of this shooting.
Yes. Yeah, I was just about to ask you about that.
Okay. So now, mind you, I'm not an expert at this. I've researched it is enough to kind of quell my curiosity. I still think we don't have all the facts. And really, I think until we get some good video details, we won't really know all the facts, right? But from what I've learned, the first victim was actually carrying concealed. Now, I've heard a couple of different points. One is that he was going in. So the bad guy, I believe, a 20-year-old kid, just super scrawny from the few pictures I've seen. He was in the bathroom at the mall. He had both rifles in there and a handgun. And I think what he did is he put them both in a backpack, broke down, and then, because carrying a full size AR in there, 16-inch barreled AR would obviously raise some concern. So I think he had them both broke down. He took them into the bathroom, assembled them, kind of got set up. He had a little magazine front pouch carrier. I think it had 3 magazines in it. And then he exited the stall and started out the bathroom. I don't know if he ran into this concealed carry holder in the hall of the bathroom or in the opening of the bathroom coming out into the food court. Not that it really matters. So there's been a whole bunch of hubbub here lately on you don't need a fast draw stroke. And there's a smidgen of truth to that in a lot of the self-defense shootings. Okay. But what you really do need, and I think that kind of got glossed over in some of that discussion, here a while back, is the ability to spin your OODA loop, right? Your decision-making process as fast as you possibly can. And this guy may have had a quarter second to recognize this kid had a rifle and was about to shoot him, and it wouldn't matter how fast your draw stroke was at that point in time. But let's say the kid, let's say the reverse of that. Let's say the good guy saw the muzzle of it coming around the corner, and it wasn't trained on him yet, but he could recognize there was a significant threat. And let's say that he started a draw stroke at that point in time. Well, the kid's probably walking very confidently, probably slowly, because he's the king of the jungle.
There's going to be no guns in here.
Right.
That's what he was thinking.
There's stickers on the doors. They can't bring guns in here. So let's say the guy had a 2.5 second draw stroke, but he only had 3 seconds to make that happen, but he's still got to recognize that. So you've got to add that back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe the dude's got a 1.5 second draw stroke, and now he's got 3 seconds to respond, right? So he may have been able to recognize that and get his gun out. And the point that I'm trying to make here is, again, you don't know what the problem is going to be. Now, I understand that, people only have so much time, et cetera, but you can develop a fast draw stroke and keep it with about 5 minutes of practice a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as it's good practice,
proper practice, yeah,
et cetera. You don't have to spend 3 hours doing dry practice. In fact, I would tell you not to even try and attempt that, because I can't tell you how many shooters I have over the years seen that put in a ton of work, way more work than I ever do, and have never even touched my ability with a handgun. And it's because the difference is the quality of the work. The work that I do is very precise and very accurate and very correct. And
effective.
I quit.
Yeah.
And when I get tired, I'm done. I'm going to take a break.
And if I can interject there, that's the point where there's diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore that additional time is not only wasted time, it's also time that can contribute to the development of bad repetitions. Right?
Yep. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Just real quick, the point that if we're gripping our pistols correctly, it's going to make us tired, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So, just to people out there that maybe don't dry fire a lot, that's one thing that they'll, as they refine their grip, etc. That's why only 5 and studs go into 10 or 15 minutes a day, but they may not need to, like you guys said.
Well, and I'd really like to double down, Spencer, on what you were hitting on. in both cases, it's interesting when we talk about this incident, and again, we're making certain assumptions on especially the individual that was killed first. But let's face it, those of us that are serious about being prepared, I think that's one of the fallacies of preparing for averages and not preparing for outliers.
Yes.
And I'm gonna admit that this is something that is within our industry, right? Is that it's preparing for averages, and that, okay, those outliers are not near as important. But I think in this instance, we could find that in one particular mass killing attempt, and there were multiple people that did pass, unfortunately, that we had two possible black swan events. One being that Eli had to take shots at 40 plus yards, and that also this individual could be proven to have needed a sub-second draw. Right? I mean, if we think through it,
That's a good point.
I think it's very possible to extrapolate that.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, I think to expound on what Spencer said, and it helps me understand it, is that maybe that guy needed a second and a 1.75 draw, and that guy had him in 1.5. Right. So not a super fast draw. I mean, like you said, Eric, it proved that but it's possible that a quicker draw could have saved that guy's life. It's possible.
It's theoretically possible. But, the other thing, too, that we've got to keep in focus here is, while I truly believe a fast draw is, especially for a civilian, I think it can be a game changer, right? But you have to be able to recognize the problem. And I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect between the sub-second draw and recognizing the problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's excellent.
You have to have both, right? Because if you don't recognize it, that sub-second draw is not going to do you any good whatsoever, right? So the mental rehearsal, the mental imaging is huge for people to do. And what I mean by that is, when I'm driving down the road, I will think of a scenario that might happen. Let's say that we come up into a huge, traffic stop, and it's backed up, and some dude jumps out of a car with an AK, like happened in Virginia several years ago, and just starts randomly shooting into cars.
Yep.
What are you going to do? And run that scenario through your head and think, shit, okay, the first thing I need to do is exit my vehicle and get as much vehicle between me and that dude as I can, and then start to try and angle a shot into him, right? Maybe I've got enough room that I can start maneuvering my car onto the shoulder of the road. Maybe I'm the car right in front of him, and I can just, V8 him instead of 9mm, right?
Skinny pedal on the right, to quote James Yeager.
Yeah. There's a reason that I like driving fast cars.
Yes.
Or at least, fairly fast. So, and it may be that you're sitting in a movie theater and you're on your phone, and some dude walks in and you're the first one that he shoots, but it's not, you're not dead. You can still function to some degree. What are you going to do? And the late Dr. William April talked about this in length, and I so treasure having gotten to train with him many different times. But he said when you're doing this, if your heart rate isn't getting up, you're not doing it correctly.
Yeah.
So there's so many facets, if you will, to a really well-rounded self-defense package, if you will, right? And yes, you only have so much time, and maybe your body, like mine, is broke as crap right now. I'm not going to be in boxing and jiu-jitsu right now. My back's screwed up. I can barely walk. But hopefully I've got some appointments coming up soon, and hopefully I'll get some relief.
Good.
But anyhow,
well, got some prayers for you, buddy.
You have to work around that at that point in time if that's the cards you're dealt, right? So yes, it's great if you're if you're freaking Paul Sharp, you're former TAC team guy, you're multiple stripe black belt, you wrestle with pros, and you're carry a gun with you everywhere you go. That's awesome. But and you do mental rehearsals and all this stuff. That's like the ultimate package, right? Well, if you're just say you're a single mom and you've got 3 kids, and you're trying to go to the mall and protect them, maybe you're only going to have a Glock 42 380 in a bra holster, because you can control it there, and your kids can't get to it, something like that. That's just the best deal that you're going to be able to present, right? So seeing the problem coming is huge, and I don't think a lot of people talk enough about that. So, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
That's awesome. I surely don't, because those of us that have had a lot of the ShivWorks material and other guys that are great, like Cliff Byerly, that we have what we know, right? And we'll espouse it. The most important self-defense skills you can't hold in your hand. They're all your mouth, your eyes, and your brain, right? But we still, a lot of us that prepare in those, still kind of keep that draw, stroke, and this situational awareness kind of separate. Even I know I do. So it's awesome hearing you, put a finite point on that. Man, you're showing some awesome insight, Spencer, and I'm glad to hear it myself, buddy.
Yeah, the draw stroke and the decision making process have to be one. It has to be, because you have to recognize the problem and then make a good decision on, do I need to pull a gun out at this point in time or not? And, how fast do I need to get that done?
Well, and Spencer, I think you are hitting it on the head about the visualization piece, the wargaming, and we also know that part of this equation, and a lot of folks may not want to admit this, but if you can get into any type of legitimate force training, this can essentially be a lifesaver, because you are going to make some of these under pressure decisions, that you have a parking place, to use William April's, the great late William April's phrasing, is to have a parking place for these things, so that, just like you said, that you can have that extremely that tenth of a millisecond decision process, so that second sub-second draw, or let's say it is the 1.5, that amount of time that you did have to make that decision, that you were able to do it and to get that crucial hit, as you succinctly said, that is crucial. That first significant hit is likely going to win the fight, right?
Yes. Yeah. And something as we're talking about, active shooter killers, a lot of them are going to be wearing body armor, so that may be something that you have to recognize in that decision-making process and go, okay, a high center chest shot that we spend so much time trying to make isn't going to work. I'm going to have to shoot the dude in the head. I'm going to have to shoot the dude in the hips. I'm going to have to shoot the dude in the elbow if that's all that I can see, and finding good force on force, man, I wish there were better outlets. But if you can get into a ShivWorks class, it's great, especially Amos. And then, I know Greg Illiferts does some, and I know
Carl Wren does too.
Carl Wren does some, and it's, and even just like with airsoft force on force, I mean that's a good learning process. So
yeah, I mean you hit it on the head, Spencer. I mean, doing airsoft force on force is still dealing with pressure.
Right.
We will definitely not poo-poo on folks engaging in that activity because it is helpful. I think that ultimately I'm interested in, and we spoke with John Murphy about this when we had him on last. I am intrigued in any methodology, and I'm doing a lot of studying this, and I don't have any definitive because I'm not an expert in it, but I am very much right now over the last 6 months or so been studying how can we bridge that gap when it's hard to get people into an ECQC or an Amos or even Carl Wren stuff. Because Aaron and I, when we were down, because that's where the advanced class was at Cara Training, is that I'm looking forward to get into Carl's class as well. Is that how do we get individuals to bridge that gap, to start getting into proper decision making under some pressure, and then when they realize, oh, it's not so big of a deal, even that little bit of a pain penalty is not a big deal either. So I think that's where I'm really starting to put some of my focus, is figuring out how do we bridge that gap, and I'm not sure the answers just yet.
Oh, that's a tough question, but I will tell you this from my experience. My good friend and mentor, Will Andrews, who teaches up at Wilshire now, at the time he was at H&H Gun Range here in Oklahoma City. And so he teaches a series of pistol skills classes, like 2 through 5 or something like that, and then a shotgun class, some other stuff. And, he did it about 3 weekends a month. So I trained with him, took every class that he had, and then started AIing for him, etc. And one year he made a decision to put about a 30 to 45 minute mindset lecture in front of the start of the class for the handgun, portion of it, right? The how do you hold it, et cetera. It was all done in a classroom, taught a little bit of a draw stroke in the classroom, and then we went to the range and shot. Well, the way he did his classes is he had a retread program, he called it. So you could come and take his classes on the retread program for $25 as many times as you wanted.
Cool.
Right? So, I mean, it's an awesome opportunity, right? To go take the class and learn it all over again. The more times you do it, the better you get at it, etc. He had about a 90% retread success rate.
Wow. That's impressive.
Before he added the 30 to 45 minute mindset lecture.
I'm telling the future here in my mind.
After he added the mindset lecture, and he stuck with it for like an entire 6 months or entire year, I believe. He had about a 25% retread program.
Wow.
Success rate.
So dang stressful, I guess.
So what it is when people decide the way our culture is right, with guns, people suddenly decide that the world is an evil place, and something happens, they bump into some jerk at Walmart or something, and all of a sudden they realize, hey, this great big guy that's mad at me could really hurt me, and I don't have anything to help myself. And they go tell their boyfriend or father or mother or daughter or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, you need to get a gun. Okay, well, we'll go check that box, we'll go to the store, we'll buy a gun. Well, maybe I really want to start carrying it, et cetera. So then they think, hey, I'm going to go take this essentially basic handgun class so that I can learn how to shoot it a little better and how to maybe carry it, how to learn how to do a draw stroke. So you have to let them do that. And then once they've done that, you can slowly add more to it, right? You can start talking to them about, situational control, as I call it, being able to see the problem, being able to talk. Verbal skills are the most underrated skills that we have.
Absolutely.
They are by far the most difficult to learn. Ask me how I know. And they are, I cannot tell you how many times I have talked my way out of a bad situation. I've had 4 attempted carjackings. I've had 3 attempting muggings. I've had guns pointed at me. I've been shot at. I've pointed guns at other people, et cetera. And you wouldn't think a dude that's, 6'2" and about, well, I'm not going to tell you how much I weigh now, COVID, but back in the day I was 6'2", lifting all the time. I weighed about 280, and, as strong as an ox, and I was doing jujitsu and all that crap and boxing and, all that. And at that point in time, that's when some of that stuff happened to me. So, but I was able to talk my way out of every single one, or, the carjackings were all involved the skinny pedal on the right. But where I'm going with that is you have to let them kind of do a little self-discovery on that almost.
Yeah.
You can't, like, you have to spoon feed them a little bit of that stuff and then hope that they start to see that just because I have a gun doesn't mean I have the answer to all the problems.
Yeah.
So that's, in my experience, that's what I have seen.
Yeah, that's a very, very good quality explanation of why, you can't push it immediately on people.
I know one.
Yep.
I know one person in the whole training community of all the people I know that her first class was ECQC.
And she came back, huh?
She's been through it been through it with me a couple times.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
And what I mean is, if that's her first class, that she decided to go any class again.
And Aaron, do you remember Irene, Aaron, a couple of ECQCs ago?
Yeah.
So she, back in Washington, of course, I'm in North Carolina now. She is, or was, one of our purple belts there at the gym, and she's still currently, I think she's still a purple belt. But anyway, shout out to Irene. She's a wonderful person.
She's super sweet.
ECQC was her first class.
Wow.
Yeah, so
well,
it's
that's
interesting.
Amazing that both of them are women.
We
know.
We'll go figure, Spencer.
Julie didn't have any jujitsu before hers.
That's even more impressive. Yeah.
And you'd be proud of me. I didn't drop the Black Hawk Down Irene quote.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's cool. We definitely share a little bit of a cool story there. Yeah, Irene. Yeah, I saw she's chimed in on a couple of things recently.
Yeah, she
and
did.
We may have to invite her on the show, man.
That'd be good.
I think we should.
Well, guys,
why don't you get her and I'll hook you up with Julie Thomas?
Yeah, let's do it.
Who
man.
is the other one? And maybe you could get both perspectives on a female perspective on taking ECQC as their first firearms related class.
That would be cool. Maybe we can make that work. I'll certainly send you a message after this.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it on to her. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, guys, we're getting pretty close to a pretty long show here. I mean, just amazing stuff, amazing
Excellent.
topics and insight here, Spencer. I'm sitting back here enjoying the heck out of learning. So again, appreciate you coming on. Now, let's just have a quick, fun conversation about what gear you're running these days, because you've went through a few, because we're friends on social media. We text each other every now and then, all that stuff. And I've seen you go through some gear evolutions and this gun and then back to this gun. And then, where are you at these days? Since you started using dots again, and because I know you had a eye issue that kind of forced you into dots for a while.
Right. I had a hip replacement, and it did not go well, and it affected my vision just like all of a sudden.
Wild.
I never wore these damn things at all, and within just like a few days, I had to wear readers, and I couldn't see my front sight, and guarantee you headbox hits at 7 yards, which is just, you've seen me shoot.
Oh yeah.
I have 20/15 vision my entire life. Right. So it was a huge shock for me. So what I had to do then was just find the fastest way I could get into a dot, which was a Glock 17 MOS with a Holosun 509 on it. But the other gear that I've been through, I've been through the striker guns. I spent quite a bit of time, about 3-4 years, on the single action guns, mainly the Berettas.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm kind of floating between a striker fired gun. I have been carrying a Smith & Wesson Shield Plus Performance Center.
Cool.
With a dot on it. So that's a 4-inch gun. It's 13-in-1. Because of my injury that I've been dealing with, I've been wearing sweats a lot because it's just more comfortable not to have a belt on right now. And so I've taken one of our keeper holsters. I've put a DCC monoblock clip on it, and I can just clip it straight onto the sweatpants. And I've practiced with it quite a bit in sub-second draws all day long, easy peasy. So I've been running that a lot. I have been.
What dot do you have on it?
I've got a Shield dot on it.
Okay.
So I bought that, and I probably kind of wished I'd have got another Holosun, the 507, I think, whatever it is.
Yeah, 507K. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I got a couple of those.
There's some things about the Shield. The dots is fine. It works great. I like it. But but there's some weird things I didn't really think through. To adjust it, you have to have like this. It comes with an Allen wrench in this little spiral thing that has marks on it. There's no marks on the dot itself. So I didn't really think that through. And I didn't really know
That's
that
all right.
until I
It
got
happens.
it, right?
Yeah.
So anyhow, and then I've been running a staccato P with a RMR on it. I have ran 1911s in the past, but I have not mastered them. So that's the reason that I went to the DA SA guns. I had a student in a class struggling with one, and he was like, so how do I shoot this thing? And I'm like, well, this is how you do it. And it was in theory, right? It wasn't something that I had done, now I carried a DA SA gun for a while, a SIG, but it wasn't something that I had put, high performance capability in.
Yeah.
Just try and say it that way. It wasn't something I had ran so much that I could guarantee you, here are a couple different ways to run the trigger system, right? And now I can do that. I've set some of my best times on drills with a DA SA gun now. And in fact, I love them. I just love them to death. But it's kind of hard to put a dot on them. And when you get a dot on them, it's really high off the bore axis. So I decided instead of doing that, I was going to go the staccato route because I wanted now to master that single action platform.
Well, Spencer, it seems like that. I mean, you've ran a gamut from running a striker fire, the DASA, and now the staccato. I'm curious. Did you ever try any of Ernest Langdon's new dot mounted slides?
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes, I have. Yeah, and like I said, it just changes the gun enough for me that I didn't want to do that.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not at all. It changed the gun enough for me that I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
And then there again, I had mastered that platform pretty well, and I wanted to kind of move on to something else. And so that single action, was the thing to do. I had actually started with just a 1911 and 9mm, 10 round mags. And I just got to the point that, man, 10 rounds is probably enough, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And so I actually just come across a good deal on a staccato and just couldn't pass it up. And so I've been running that. That's probably where I'm going to stay for a few years.
Nice.
Because some of the stuff that I've just recently been able to do with it, it's way simpler than a DASA gun. It takes a lot of work to make a DASA gun work. It can be done. It just takes a lot of work to do it.
Mm-hmm.
My eye vision is coming back. A little tip on that. There's a app that you can get called Glasses Off. I've started using that again now, and man, it's really sharpening my vision up. Pretty quick.
Wow!
So
I'll make a note of that because I still have close-up vision issues.
Yeah, that may be a tip for some people. I actually talked to the engineers there once about creating a shooting program with it, but they didn't seem to have that much interest in it. But through that conversation, I guess they track all the performance of that because the app gets more difficult as you go to train your brain to look through blurry eyes. It's essentially what it does. and he said that my results were very untypical. So just FYI on that.
Interesting. Now, so you bring up the staccato. I've been kind of on a kick since Cliff Byerly, when we took his complete combatant class, he did something really rude and handed me his staccato. and now every one of my friends that has one, I'm kind of pissed at them. So
dude, I'm going to tell you what, and I will throw this out there. And the guys like to have killed me, but we now have a staccato holster available through Keeper's Concealment. And
awesome.
I don't want this to come off braggy in any way, but I think it may be the best holster we have ever created. Cool. And it is the second most comfortable holster I've ever worn in my life.
Nice.
And the only other one that the top one is the one I have for my Glock, and it's pretty long. So I'm running a 17 with a KKM comp, and that extra length, especially for bigger guys, really matters. And that thing's just the absolute perfect length for me. And man, I can put that thing on and go all day. I have literally, when my stepmother was moving, I literally got up in the morning, put it on, wore it all day, helping her, slept with it on, got up the next day, run errands, moved her, all this stuff. And then the next day, drove another 6 hours home, and it was like it just wasn't even there.
Awesome. Now you're talking about your 17 holster or your staccato one?
Well, they are essentially the same. They're both just incredibly comfortable. So, but anyhow, I've
definitely told people that it's kind of counterintuitive that a longer holster can be more comfortable than the shorter one.
Yes.
Well, Eric, as I sit here, I'm gonna butter up Spencer a little bit. One of the most comfortable holsters that I wear on a regular basis is this boy right here, in my 43 in my errand. I know that's cheating a little bit, but
no, and that's, we were the first company that I'm aware of in the industry that added length to the holsters for the smaller guns.
Oh yeah, it works great, man. I'm in my
now you see
gym
it
shorts
everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
I use it in my gym shorts and my gi pants.
That right there,
all the time, buddy.
That right there.
Well, so, and I'll just say this, Spencer, I've been, I keep coming up with excuses to get another Glock. Okay. So, and I think of guns in terms of how many Glocks I could get or how many, but I was thinking, okay, man, I'm not buying that Wilson Combat. It'll cost me 8 Glocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was thinking that the staccatos were in that 4K range, but even brand new, I think the top is about $2,500, which still isn't cheap, but I think you can get them around 2K, and of course you find one used. Now the staccato's back on my wish list because I was thinking they were in the the 4K range.
Right.
So I was thinking about getting an LTT with the optic cut because I need optics now because of my vision.
Right.
But I'm sure eyeing that staccato now with the lower price than I thought they were. But that's still not cheap. But those things are like driving a Porsche for sure.
Well, and I think you hit it on the head, Spencer. You're talking about mastering another platform, and that's certainly laudable for sure.
Right,
you put in the time.
the other thing too about the staccato and the double action guns is I believe those are the safest guns to carry, right? So with the DASA gun, you can put your thumb on the hammer when you holster it. There's no pretension on any of the trigger mechanisms, etc. Right? So you can holster that gun with absolute confidence that it won't go off. Well, you can do the same thing with the staccato or 1911, right? You've got a thumb safety you pop on, or if you don't, our holster actually turns it on if you have the factory staccato safety, right?
What'd you say that your holster pushes the safety out if it's not on?
That's correct. If you go to holster one of our 1911s, if you have the correct safety, mind you, on that, okay, it will actually click the safety on for you as you put it in the holster if you were to forget it. Okay,
that's mind-boggling right there. I don't think you should have said anything about that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's mind blown over here, buddy.
Pretty cool.
That's cool.
Pretty cool. We worked that into the holster. It works really well with the staccato. So, and then you can break your grip a little bit. Put your thumb on the hammer, on the now cocked and locked hammer, right? And you can holster that gun with the thumb safety on, your thumb on the hammer, and the grip safety activated.
Yeah.
So, reholstering the gun is the most dangerous thing we're going to do with it, right? So the most safety we can build in that, the better. I'm still a little leery of some of the striker fired guns out there that people say, hey, this is just like a 1911 trigger. It's awesome. And there's nothing that prevents that trigger from getting the slightest amount of disturbance, and it could go off while it's going in the holster. That's one reason that I've gone to the staccato as well. So
awesome. Well, Spencer, I think we've taken your time up enough for tonight, man. Just a blast of a conversation. And we're honored to have you on. And I repeat, we are honored to have Keepers Concealment as a sponsor of the show, and just being involved with someone like you that's so wise and has so much to teach. Thank you for coming on again, and thank you for partnering with us also.
Oh, absolutely, guys. I'm honored to be here. I really enjoy it.
It's a great time, Spencer. Thank you very much, buddy.
Yeah.
We're going to do this very soon.
Cool.
We're going to do it again.
One other thing I'll throw out there just real quick, and I think you guys talk about it, but if you're carrying a gun, you need to have some form of legal representation. CCW Safe, I believe, is the best on the market. And if you use code KC10OFF, that'll get you 10% off any product that they sell.
Awesome. Yep. And how about finding you online as well if folks want to get in touch with you?
keepersconcealment.com. It's all right there.
And we'll have it in the show notes. Of course, it's in the show notes every week, but
that's awesome.
Cool.
Well, awesome talking to you guys, and I'm gonna bow out now and chill out with my fam. But you guys have a good evening, and just awesome talking to you, Spencer. And we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.